Mel McFarland. Mel, a noted historian of our railroads. You authored the Midland Route, the Cripple Creek Road, Rocketing to the Rockies. And since 1980, you've edited the Colorado Midland Quarterly, plus written local history columns in the West Side Pioneer, Fountain Valley News, Ute Pass Courier, and other newspapers and journals. Mel, generous with his time and knowledge, gives programs in our schools and to civic and historical groups. Unfortunately for us, his books are out of print, but soon we hope the Midland Route will be back in print. A few years ago, if you drove down southbound I-25 through town, you were not hallucinating when you saw that caboose in someone's backyard. That was Mel's caboose, which the Colorado Department of Highways had to move when they reworked I-25, and they moved it up to his home in Rock Rimmon. That's how much he loves the railroad and our railroad history. Mel McFarland, please come up here so we can honor you and celebrate you and thank you. Laura, come up and help me so that we can give you the Golden Quill Award. Mel McFarland, you have been and continue to be a stalwart champion for the currency of our history as a value that tells us who we were, what we built, and why those financial and industrial achievements were so important to who we were then and moved us forward to who we are now. The Golden Quill Award. Given the achievements and legacy of numerous writers in our Pikes Peak region, the Golden Quill Award exemplifies literary achievement that communicates an understanding, celebration, and love of our local and Colorado history, universal human nature, with the literary and cultural heritage of our Pikes Peak region. Therefore, with pride and honor, the Friends of the Pikes Peak Library District present the Golden Quill Award to you, Mel McFarland, for your lifelong commitment to and achievements in historical literature, especially for your writings that document and celebrate our local and Colorado railroads. We are proud to call you one of our own. Thank you, Mel. And for the coinage of your words, we give you the currency of the kingdom. Mel, would you say a few words, please?
It's really an honor to be up here. Some of you know I'm a native of this town. Fourth generation resident. My sister was sitting over here, and I were very lucky. We were raised in a family that believed in reading. As a lifelong educator, I spent 23 years teaching middle school in the region. I sometimes wonder what will happen in the future. But we were very lucky. Our parents believed in reading, and we read a lot. One of our favorite rooms in the schools were those libraries. I went to North Junior. I graduated from Palmer High School. The librarians knew who we were. I remember on one occasion I was called into the office of the junior high school librarian, and I was wondering if I had something overdue. No, she wanted to give me a book. They were, like unfortunately libraries have to do, with disposing of books, and I got my pick. I've been a librarian myself. When I was in the Air Force, I was there for only 4 years, but I was on a little radar station up on a mountain in Wyoming, and we had a 500-book library. My library at home is bigger than that. But libraries have been very important. It's not enough time to spend in a library. Maybe I'll come back as a ghost and haunt Penrose Public Library. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving right along here in River City. Michael McGarrity is the author of more than 12 novels set in the Southwest, primarily New Mexico. He holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and one in clinical work. His career in criminal justice includes work in corrections, law enforcement, security, police officer training, and as a Santa Fe County deputy sheriff, he worked as a patrol officer, community relations officer, training and planning supervisor, and lead investigator for the sex crimes unit which he established. Certainly those jobs provided him with a wealth of material for mysteries and stories. He also taught at the New Mexico Law Enforcement Academy, has been an investigator and caseworker for the Public Defender's Office, and in 1987 was honored as Santa Fe's Police Officer of the Year. Michael has served on the faculty of colleges and universities, teaching courses in psychology and counseling. For years, he maintained a private practice in family therapy. And with the publication of Tularosa in 1996, Michael turned to writing full-time. Living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, a number of his best-selling novels have been nominated for awards, and in 2004, he received the New Mexico Governor's Award for Excellence in the Arts and Literature. He helped establish the Hillerman McGarrity Creative Writing Scholarship at the University of New Mexico, the Richard Bradford Memorial Creative Writing Scholarship at the Santa Fe Community College, and the N. Scott Mamaday Creative Writing Scholarship at the Institute of American Indian Arts. He's currently working on his new book, a trilogy, finishing the third book, and was recently named a finalist for the prestigious Spur Award from the Western Writers Association for his historical novel, Backlands. Michael, would you please come up and let us honor you? And as he comes up, he's going to talk about how setting is character, and just as setting and place are important character in Frank Waters' books, so too setting is important in Michael's books. And I'll read to you a very brief description from the Tularosa Basin in Hard Country. The basin was vast, inspiring, daunting, filled with plants and animals that stung and bit, harsh and windswept, ravaged by floods and parched by drought, and mostly empty of people. That suited John Kearney just fine. Michael, we present you with the Frank Waters Award from the Pikes Peak Library District, friends. Given the legacy of Frank Waters, the Frank Waters Award stands for exemplary literary achievement and a lifetime canon of writing that communicates a deep understanding, celebration, and love of our human nature, our Western heritage, and peoples of all races. Therefore, with pride and honor, the friends of the Pikes Peak Library District present the Frank Waters Award to you, Michael McGarrity, for your lifelong commitment to and achievements in literature, and especially for your writings that document and celebrate, in fiction and fact, the peoples and cultures of the American Southwest. Frank Waters would be proud to call you one of his peers, and we are proud to call Michael McGarrity one of our own. I'll move aside and Michael will share some words with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here and to receive this award. And it's also an honor to share the spotlight with Mel as he received his richly deserved award from this organization. Linda asked me for a title of my speech. She suggested setting his character, and I went along with it because I didn't want to think about what I was going to say. So I may or may not, depending on my mood, speak to that promised subject. You'll just have to bear with me. I tend to free associate. What a prestigious group I've joined because of your selection of me. It really is an honor because this is not the kind of award that you can apply for. There are all kinds of awards out there that writers can apply for, but this is one that is given totally as a surprise when I heard about it in November of last year, I think it was. And that makes it even more meaningful, I think, at least to me as a writer, that it comes from the generosity and the concern and the decision-making of an independent group that I have nothing to do with other than be here today, and thank you for it. I do want to recognize one person in the audience who told me over a half a century ago that she would marry me, and has done that for over a half a century, my beautiful wife, Emily Beth, aka Mimi McGarrity. I didn't start out to be a writer. I did a lot of other things. I wasn't the kind of person who was interested in just doing one thing, so I did a bunch of different things in my life, and I had many different careers. And Mimi likes to say that she had always planned to have 5 husbands. She just didn't realize it was going to be one guy 5 different times. And that's pretty accurate, I think. I think that's probably why our relationship has remained so strong. I didn't even start out to be a mystery writer. That wasn't part of my agenda either. I just wanted to see if I could tell a good story. And I think really now I've become kind of a dinosaur because I fit into that category of old white guy writing good stories that doesn't seem to really be where the literary landscape is today. And so I'm kind of really an anachronism because a lot of literature that's being written today is being written by those people who have graduated from master's and bachelor's degrees in creative writing. And I'm not one of those, and I'm very glad I'm not, because I think it would have interfered with the kind of stories I wanted to tell and the kind of writing I like to do. I write my books very straightforwardly. I don't try to hide anything. I don't try to fool the reader. I try to tell them a good story that is engaging and interesting enough so that they'll follow along with it regardless of where it goes, and that the characters, the people, and the events will be authentic and real enough so that there's a believability to what I write. And I've actually had some really fine success doing that. A number of my books have been bestsellers nationally, and I've been able to make a comfortable living as a writer for 20 years, which is not an easy thing to do. And so I'm lucky. I don't like to use the word blessed because that's kind of a Santa Fe New Age word. Everybody in Santa Fe is blessed. I'm Irish, I'm just lucky. So I wrote these 12 crime novels, and I wanted to step back and write a prequel to that. You all know what a prequel is. It's something that predates the debut novel and talks a little bit about the character prior to their introduction onto the page. And so I went to my publisher. I'm with Penguin Random House, an imprint called Dutton. I've been with them with the next book. The Last Ranch will be the final book in the trilogy. It'll be, I think, my 12th book with them, or 11th. I went to my publisher and I said, I want to step aside from the crime fiction and I want to write a prequel. And he said, okay, turn in an outline. I'd never done that before, so I turned in an outline and started the book, and I got about a third into it, and I realized it couldn't be one book, so I went back to him, showed him the pages, went back to him and said, how about we do a trilogy? And he liked it. He liked the idea. So actually, this may be the first prequel trilogy in the history of 20th and 21st century literature. I'm breaking new ground here. And so what was going to be one book has morphed into a trilogy, and there are 2 books out, Hard Country and Backlands, and The Last Ranch will be out in June of next year. And it covers 4 generations and 100 years of history. And it has been a wonderful, wonderful ride for me because I had to learn so many things about a life that I didn't inhabit. When you write contemporary fiction, it's pretty easy because you can just go out and say, well, this is the way the world looks, and this is the way people dress, and this is the way people talk, and this is where they live, and these are how the buildings look, and these are how the automobiles look. But when you write historical fiction, you've got to go back in time and bring to life a world that you didn't inhabit, and that you can only imagine through the writings of others and the research that you did, and thinking about how places looked before the world changed and the people came and things happened to that land that in some ways is irreversible. Another example is law enforcement. Okay, I know how to be, well, I did know how to be a contemporary age cop. I don't think I'd want to be one today. But what was law enforcement like in 1880, in 1890, in 1900? Completely different. And I had to learn what a law enforcement officer in the New Mexico territory before the turn of the 20th century would do within the parameters of his job. One of the things that I like to talk about when I talk about setting is I tell people who've been to Santa Fe or live in Santa Fe and they drive through the pinon juniper studded woodlands that it used to be a ponderosa forest there. And people say, what? I said, yeah, you've driven through Flagstaff and you've seen the ponderosa pines in Flagstaff. That's the way Santa Fe looked in 1650, in 1700. Well, why doesn't it look that way now? Because people used all the lumber. What did they have for heat? Wood. What did they use to build with? Wood. Where did that forest go? It went to sustain the people that moved there to settle when the conquistadores came up from Mexico into northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. A lot of people forget that you were part of that immigration here in the southern part of Colorado, but I know it's true, and so do you. What does setting do to inform a writer's work? Well, think about yourself and where you come from. Think about how that environment, whether you're native born like Mel, or whether you migrated from Wisconsin, whether you grew up in Texas, think about how that has influenced who you are today. Does it affect the way you talk? Does it affect the way you dress? Does it affect the way you think? Does it impact your values in any way? And the answer to that can only be yes. It can only be yes. We're so urbanized, though, in our lives today that we tend to forget about it, and we take all of that for granted. But put it into the broader perspective of maybe Linda, who was raised outside of town in a country area, or somebody who's ranch raised, or somebody who grew up and lived in Brooklyn for the first 40 years of their lives. All of those influences are inbred into who we are as characters, as real, living, breathing characters. So, does setting influence what you write when you put it on the page? Does it influence how a character might speak, how he might act, how he will talk, the language he will use? I love this example. In Hard Country, my first book in the trilogy, which opens in 1875 and runs through to the end of World War I, you're going to be hard put to find the word hello. Now, why is that? It's such a common word. We use it all the time. Hello, how are you? Hello. Well, guess what? It wasn't invented until after the invention of the telephone. Ahoy! Ahoy is the genesis of the word hello. The call that one would make from a ship to another ship morphed into the word hello. You won't find it in hard country because it didn't exist and therefore it doesn't belong. So, authenticity in language, authenticity in dress, authenticity in imagining, or at least researching it well enough so that you can get a feel for how a place looked before your time on this planet. And being able to put that into the perspective of the story is absolutely vital. It's all vital. I'm deep into working on the third book in the trilogy, which is called The Last Ranch. And for those of you who are not familiar with the series, this standalone 3-book trilogy, it all takes place in south central New Mexico on the vast Tularosa Basin and the surrounding area, which today is inhabited by White Sands Missile Range. Now, I'll tell you something interesting about what is in the middle of that missile range and surrounded by it. It's called the San Andres National Wildlife Refuge, and nobody can go there. Nobody can go there. You can't just get in your RV and drive down there and show up at the gate. If you're lucky, you can go on a guided tour every once in a while. Just like if you're lucky, twice a year you can go in and see Trinity Site, which is also on the missile range. But that in and of itself is an incredible place. It's an incredible place that you would want to go and see if you're writing about that area of the country. So there are all these stories, there are all this history, there are all these people that populate this trilogy that I'm totally engrossed in. And most of them are real. One of the great unsolved mysteries of the Southwest was the murder of Albert Jennings Fountain and his 8-year-old son, Henry, on a remote road between Lincoln Town and Las Cruces, that to this day has never been solved. And to this day is a bone of contention for the ancestors, not the ancestors, but the people who came after them, the descendants of the warring parties that created the situation where Albert and his son were killed. Great, great unsolved mystery that still resonates today among the descendants of the people that live down there. How could I not be a writer in that kind of environment? How could I not be a writer with that kind of history, that kind of setting, that kind of landscape, that kind of mystery that surrounds us in the great Southwest? One of the things I had to do was leave out about 90% of all the things that I wanted to say, because there's just too much. There's just too much history to cram into a 500-page book. So, setting, character, history, landscape, dialogue, costumes, all of that has just been a great, great ride for me in terms of putting it all together and trying to tell stories that entertain, hopefully that enlarge, that may even add new truths, because truth is not fixed. When I was doing the research, I would find out that there would be one version of who killed Albert Jennings Fountain and another version. And one version would be, well, so-and-so did it. The other version would be written by a friend of the guy who was ultimately tried and acquitted of doing it. And that guy, his friend, happened to be a business partner who made a lot of money with his relationship with the fellow who went on trial for the murder and was acquitted. So history is fluid. The truth can be fluid. New truths can emerge. Out of all of it, the best thing that I can do as a writer is tell a story that captures your imagination, that makes you care about the characters, whether they're good or bad, that draws you in and holds you to the point that it won't let you go until you've finished. So there you have it. I would like to thank you once again for a wonderful, wonderful award, for having me here today, for your kindness, for your generosity, for your support of libraries, which I dearly, dearly love, and where I, much like Mel, spent a great deal of my childhood because I often didn't have the quarter for the Saturday matinee, and the library was always there and it was always free. I didn't start college until I was called an older student, and when I did start, I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be bright enough to do it. In fact, my father told me I probably wasn't going to be bright enough to do it. He wasn't really a good friend of mine. But I went to UNM, I went to the University of New Mexico, where I met Emily Beth Pape, who agreed to marry me after I had to kind of twist her arm into it. And I started out thinking, well, this is going to be a hard road to hoe. I'm not going to be, up there with the A students. Well, halfway through my freshman year, I realized that I had pretty much read the liberal arts curriculum in the public libraries. And so while they were teaching kids about things that were new to them, I was saying, hey, I read that book when I was in the 8th grade. So what did libraries do? It gave me a leg up, simply by being this wonderful, wonderful resource that I was able to cram into this hungry head words, thoughts, philosophies, ideas, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the life of Benjamin Franklin, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, the French and Indian War. It all just compelled me. Naval history, Nelson and Trafalgar, and all of it, and all of it, and all of it. And where did I get it? Did I get it from television? No, I'm a pre-television child. We didn't have television. Did I get it from the radio? No, that was yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and things like that, and The Shadow, and Dave McNeil and the Breakfast Club, or whatever the hell it was that broadcast out of Chicago. I got it from libraries. I got it from libraries. So what you do, what you give to this community, what you give to the generation now and the generations to come, I applaud you. Thank you.